Good morning and welcome to this next episode of the Emerging Future series. For me, especially, it's a unique privilege because today also happens to be Teachers' Day, and one of the best teachers I have personally known is my guest. I'm delighted to have Dr. Rashmi Vij on this episode today. Rashmi, welcome to our session of Emerging Future.
Thank you, Mr. Vimal Mahendran. Thank you so much for inviting me on your this series. I'm really honored to be part of it today, especially on Teachers' Day.
Thank you so much. So before I start, let me just go through some of our rules for this session. Please, for all the guests who are listening in, please post your questions in the Q&A section, and hopefully during this call, Rashmi and I will try and answer all the questions. If you have just comments or suggestions or just a counterpoint also, please add it to the chat section below, so that I can focus on the questions first and the chat section I can take up separately. All your microphones will remain muted. The way to send us questions would be purely through the Q&A section over here. So thank you very much. Before I get into this episode, may I also give you a brief introduction to Rashmi? I say brief with all humility. It's not brief. It's a long introduction to Rashmi and her achievements today. Dr. Rashmi Vij is presently the principal of the Police DAV Public School, and she holds a doctorate in psychology. She has, of course, had a brilliant track record throughout her academic career. Started as a lecturer at the Hansraj Mahila Mahavidyalaya HMV in Jalandhar in 1987, and since then in the academic world. She also then moved on to, in 1996, to the Police DAV Public School as the founder principal. At present, she is the regional officer of all DAV public schools in Jalandhar zone. She is also the manager of Police DAV Public School, Amritsar, Patiala, Ludhiana, and the coordinator of all police schools in Punjab. She is the chairperson of Jalandhar Independent Schools Sahoday complex as well. Beside this, of course, there is a whole list of awards, recognitions that Rashmi has received and been honored with. And I think at the top of the pile is, of course, the National Teachers Award, which she received from the Honorable President of India. Of course, she's been the best principal, and she was recognized with this by the DAV Management Committee in New Delhi. She has the Scout Award, the Ed Leadership Outstanding Contribution to Education Award. If this was not enough, she has Global Teacher Accreditation and an award for that. And also, she is, I understand, Rashmi, you are the ambassador for the British Council and several of their programs. The list goes on, and I will not read out the whole list, but there is another aspect to you, which I am very honored to share here. Rashmi is also the vice president of Shockball Federation of India, president of Punjab Shockball Association, and hopefully we will talk about Shockball in some time. She's also president of the Kho Association, Jalandhar, Roller Skating Association. She's co-chairperson of Spic Mecca, Jalandhar. And beside this, she is also a resource person for CBSE and an expert on CCE, CBE, stress management, class management skills, life skills, and pre-primary education. Of course, for all this, she has traveled extensively all over the world for sharing her experiences in India, and also bringing some of the best practices she's seen overseas back home and bringing them into the education systems here. So Rashmi, very much welcome to this session. And May I start with my first question? You've had quite a journey. What led you to teaching?
Thank you, Mr. Vimal Mahendru. First of all, I want to wish everybody a happy Teachers' Day. Today, I received many beautiful thoughts, and the most beautiful was that if there were no teachers, there no other profession would exist. So I thought this was very heartening. Yes, that a teacher not only teaches the students, but everywhere anybody go has been influenced and touched by the teachers. The teachers' influence lasts till eternity. So that's the beauty of being a teacher. And when you ask me what made me a teacher, my father, Professor C.P. Viplani, was a legendary professor of English literature in DAV College, Amritsar. He was so much loved and admired as a teacher. He had a huge fan following, which we could witness since childhood. And the impact he had on others was amazing. And when you would attend his classes, sit there as small children, I think I was inspired. It was very clear for me right from the very beginning that I wanted to be a teacher. And moreover, I think I got his genes. It is in my DNA and in my genetic structure to be a teacher. So that is why I think that for me, becoming a teacher was a very, very natural choice, which came very naturally to me.
Fantastic. Rashmi, so you started, of course, teaching at the HMV College in Jalandhar. What led to the transition to school?
Yeah, it's very interesting, Vimalji. I did my psychology honors, then my post-graduation in psychology, then MPhil, then PhD. I was all set to become a university professor. By chance, landed in college because I got tenured position there straight away. And then, I loved my subject, I had taken up psychology, having rebelled to my father who wanted me to do English literature, because he would say that he has made thousands of people do English literature and his own daughter will not do. But when I studied psychology as a subject, I fell so much in love with it that I wanted to pursue it, and I pursued it with full. English psychology professor was very, very close to my heart, and I enjoyed it thoroughly. I will never say that I wanted to get away from it, but there was a small little itch inside my heart, which was always telling me, and my husband joined me in reinforcing and endorsing that thought that aren't we living for ourselves? Am I doing something for the society or not? So that really troubled me because I wanted to do such a kind of work which would, of course, support me and the family. But at the same time, I feel that I've made a difference in some people's life. And then this offer to become the principal of Police DAV came along the way on its own. And my husband was really excited about it. And I also contemplated when we realized that the school is going to be for underprivileged children and the segment of society which is largely ignored, because police does so much for the community, but who is doing anything for the police, and we have such high expectations from police to protect us, to look after us, but what do we do for them? So I think that really motivated me and inspired me, and my major reason was that to go ahead and make a difference in few lives, and I wanted to do something for my country, even if it was a small bit. I often say a couplet which says कि ये माना कि ज़मीं को ना गुलजार कर सके, ये माना कि ज़मीं को ना गुलजार कर सके, कुछ खार तो कम कर गए गुजरे जहाँ से हम. Khar is the thorns. So at least if we can't make a huge impact, but a little bit impact, I think that is what we all must strive to. That I make a difference, even if it's few lives, 100 lives or 1,000 lives. But let's touch lives and make a difference to them. I think I got it from my father.
What lovely words and what lovely thoughts. Thank you, Rashmi. Now, of course, I've had the privilege of visiting you in your school, and it is huge. I don't think I've seen a school with more students. Now, just for the sake of, giving a context to this conversation, could you explain a little more about your school, students, and some statistics about the school that you are heading?
Right. Yeah. So I founded this school in 1996. So we have entered into our 25th year, and it has been personally very satisfying being the founder principal of the school. And when we started, we had around, in the first year, 246 students. School was till grade second. Eventually, within few years' time, we upgraded it to class 12th and affiliated with CBSE board. But we are very proud to say that today we have 6,000 students enrolled. It is the biggest school of the city, and 240 350 support staff, and I have a 250 rooms building, to accommodate. And we have the state-of-the-art infrastructure with 3D labs, which most of the schools don't have, at Atal Tinkering Lab. And our sports infrastructure is also amazing. We train students into 28 official games, and I have around 30 to 35 coaches for the same. So that is the statistics. And for every, I think we try to provide every possible infrastructure. All our classrooms are smart rooms, and we have a very good faculty. Yeah, so that is what is about our school statistics.
Wow, fantastic. But Rashmi, if I may take the liberty of asking a question, somehow the perception, I grew up in Punjab and studied in Punjab. The perception I have grown up with is Punjab police on one side and DAV institutions on another. The public perception is not the friendliest. And for me to associate both these brands with education is a bit of a question mark. How do you look at this?
Yeah, certainly it's very interesting that two extremes, So I laughingly say that in education, nobody is a culprit till proved otherwise, and for police, nobody is innocent till proved otherwise. So it is such a contrast between both the sides. But, I think it is the humanitarian welfare phase of Punjab police. At the time of when terrorism was at its peak in the state of Punjab, some visionary officers like Mr. KPS Gill and Mr. Buller thought that our children of our personnel are being kidnapped or being killed, so they must be put in the safe environment, and they don't need to go to school outside that safety zone. So that's how they decided to open the first school in Amritsar. It was, and then they thought that we are so busy in policing, we don't have time. Who will look after the school? So they looked around and they found that DAV was perhaps the best organization, and DAV had such more project schools going on with Reliance and BBMP. So they thought that this was an organization who knows its job, they are professionals. So they decided to collaborate, police and DAV, and I call it Vivek Veerta Vivek Sangam, because police stands for Veerta and Vivek Sangam of Vivek and Veerta. And I think it has done very well because we have all the infrastructure and support provided by Punjab Police. And then the educational know-how, technology, pedagogy, teacher training, it all comes from DAV. So it just completes the whole thing, and it is that's how our school has grown to this level. And a lot of people keep asking me this question, which you have asked, and they say that what is police doing in education, or what is DAV doing with education? But together they have come up, and we have many schools in Punjab and Haryana model. They have around police officers keep visiting for others to follow, and other state police to start similar initiative for their police personnel. But of course, I would like to clarify that we have around 50-50 population. It's not only that the police personnel study, children study in our school. It is around 50% of the civilian and 50% of the police population. But of course, it is subsidized. We have charged half the fee to a police ward, then we do it to the civilian, and all their support staff children are taught free of cost.
Okay. So, but in your school, have you perceived any how's the interaction between the children which come from police families and from civilian families? Because police and civilians in society, sometimes the perception in Punjab is that they are chalk and cheese.
No, I think that our school has done a wonderful thing to bridge this gap and eliminate these misperceptions in the society, because some people are still apprehensive sending their children because they feel that police they use bad language, and so their children must have acquired that from them, or they must be lacking discipline. So these are kind of the preconceived notions, and anybody who reaches our school, because our school has created so much of impact in the state and the city, that by now people know that we deliver high quality education. And when once they enter, they realize there is hardly any difference. It is only a perception. You know, they are all as innocent and beautiful children as any other child. And if we talk about bad language or any such mannerism, that can be prevalent in any other household as well. That differs from one household to other. So it is perhaps unfair to make any such kind of generalization about any group of people. And I think for civilian children, it is very, very humbling experience for them, because when they come and interact with children who are from very middle class or low middle class families, and they suddenly develop a lot of gratitude that they have so much and they are still ungrateful, and they become very, very grounded because they are interacting with a simpler lot who are very happy with what they have. So children who come from very affluent families also, they also learn a lot from, I think, such children. So my experience of 25 years say that it has been a beautiful experience. My own children used to study in APJ school, and then I shifted them to this school, and they would be surprised that, you know, how contented and happy people are. And I think in lifelong, if I did something very nice for them, was to shift them in my own school.
Okay, so Rashmi, this brings me to another question. You make it, of course, I fully agree with what you're saying, that, you know, the innocence and the openness with which children come there, clean hearts. But I'm sure there must be some challenges. What have been, in your 25-year journey with this institution, been some of the biggest challenges, nightmares, things which keep you awake at night or wake you up in the morning?
Thank you, Vimal. It's a very, very relevant question, and I think the most important for me. You know, when I started this school, of course, it itself looked like a huge challenge, because our management wanted a world-class school. You know, my founder chairman, Mr. Buller used to come every day to school, and he would say, "Oh, one day it will be the best school of the city," and I would be like, "Inshallah, amen," because I was not sure, because we had children coming from all heterogeneous population, and most of them being the first generation learners. And then we had IPS officers, children. I'm proud to say that at present, the DGP of India Raw, you know, Mr. Samant Goel, his children were in my school in the first batch, right? And now both of them are IPS officers themselves, you know. So naturally, and in the second batch, I had so many IPS officers' children studying in the school who themselves wanted the best education for their children. And they had put so much of trust in me that they started sending their children in our school. So I had such a heterogeneous population, and the challenge was to make the child of a DIG and SSP rank officer on the same bench as a support staff child would sit, and who were first generation, and here were parents who were very aware and very involved, and here there were parents on the other side who didn't know ABCD or anything else. So that was our major challenge. So and I used to think, how would they help their children at home, these parents who had simpler background or were semi-literate. So I decided it would be a no homework school. You know, we will teach as much as we should in the school, and we will train them in all the competitions, dance, music, everything ourselves. So we took the onus of teaching and learning both on ourselves, and I think that made the difference. When other civilians, you know, initially the school was open only for police wards, but when other civilians were interacting with these parents, and they realized that our school was doing all that, you know, because I used to think, what do I expect from my child's school? that, you know, I'm so busy, they take away all my attention and my pressure and stress. So that's what I started doing. You know, my teachers worked very hard, and we would go extra mile to take it on ourselves. So I think that made our school, when even CBSE had not made it compulsory, no bag till class second, we had it in our school. And we had so much of uniformity, the common menu, so that no child brings very fancy food, you know, so no canteen. So these things, you know, just to bring that equality in my system. Not even on a single day a child was allowed to come to school without the school uniform, so that though disparity was visible. Right. So I took care of such small things, and then I decided that these are the children I want a holistic development for them. When you say what kept you awake at night was this, you know, that I wanted to train them in music, dance, bhangra, art, and make them excellent orators. And I think that that is what we could do. Our school has been treated as the most innovative school by Innovation Foundation of India. That's what I got the Scouts Award from them in Rashtrapati Bhavan. And we have a beautiful library. You know, anybody who's visited our library can see that teachers and students have decorated it themselves, because for me, any school's library tells what it thinks of education. Our children are very good readers and very good orators, and then there's so much of focus on art. And because their parents couldn't help them, we started making them independent learners. Any child who has studied in our school would say that, you know, I don't need anybody to learn. So that has been in the long term very good. And as I said, they turn out to be humble yet well-grounded individuals. Wherever they go for any competition, like when our children went for NASA competition at the national and international level, in Delhi, everybody was saying, what is this police DAV? You know, my son was part of it, and he said, when we went, people laughed. What is this police DAV? They didn't know what is police DAV. When we left, they all knew only police DAV. So this has been the kind of our journey has been, you know.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so that's how they won the national and international competition.
What a powerful message. And in fact, I must say, Rashmi, as you are speaking, it's increasingly, I think your passion is infectious. I'm also feeling charged. I mean, I wish I could go back to school now. Tell me, in this journey, I'm sure you've had a lot of wonderful experiences also. Can you narrate an episode which kind of defines really what you've been able to achieve, or what the school has been able to achieve in this journey?
Yeah, you know, when you asked me this, I particularly remember that, you know, as I said, for me, what was very heartening was that I wanted to teach those children who were first generation and change their class. I want to give you an example. There was this one constable, he was involved in the construction of the school, and his children were studying in a government school in a village. So Mr. Tiwari, who is now the DGP, he was here posted as the commandant. He insisted that you bring children to your school, this school. When he brought them, the daughter was in grade 2nd, but the son was in grade 4. I admitted the daughter because I thought she has time to catch up with her English and other stuff. But with son, he was totally studied in Punjabi medium, and English was negligible. I was very, very apprehensive to admit him, but then we accepted it as a challenge. The children grew up so much that you will be happy to know that on this day, both of them are doctors, right? And Navjot, the boy, you know, he is doing his, he's done his master MS from DMC Ludhiana in ortho. At present, he's doing DM, and he's the author of 2 novels, English novels.
Wow.
You know, so he came to me that he wanted me to release his novel, and I was like, I had tears in my eyes that this boy who came to us totally not knowing English today. I said, who has written it? He said, me. I said, who edited it? He said, one of my doctor friends. And you know, such simple family, and both the children are doctors. He got rank 5 in the Punjab PMT. You know, so it is like so heartening and so personally satisfying. And me and my husband have always tried. Anybody who comes to me that we cannot afford, and I'm withdrawing the child because I can't pay the fee. So I either appeal to my philanthropist friend like Mr. Vela or Vivek Mahindru, or my husband, and I pitch myself into supporting such children. So there's a beautiful couplet which says, "Ek katra hi sahi." एक कतरा ही सही मुझे ऐसी नियत देना मौला किसी को प्यासा देखूं तो मैं दरिया हो जाऊं.
Beautiful.
So किसी को प्यासा देखूं तो मैं दरिया हो जाऊं. So that is the thing कि अगर मैं किसी को प्यासा देखूं और मैं दरिया हो जाऊं, बस ऐसी ही नियत मुझे उस मौला से चाहिए. Yeah, that I just
can
want
imagine.
that nobody should remain thirsty from the nectar of education. Those who can't speak English, I just want to translate it for them. Yeah.
So Rashmi, may I now get into some serious stuff here? Of course, this is a case of some of the best who absorbed the atmosphere, the schooling, the education they received. But how do you generally motivate all the students? Because everybody is not of this caliber. Maybe some are on the other end of the spectrum. How do you end up, and maybe if you have some experiences or episodes to share, how do you really motivate those who really don't want to change?
Thank you, Vimalji. A very beautiful question, because I think motivating people is my forte, right? And just before the board exams start, I start motivating my children, the toppers separately, and those who are not coping up and getting sufficient marks to pass. So I motivate them, and there are few, like I keep telling them that, see, if you have some limitation, you can overcome it with hard work. I would tell them that it's a quote I created myself, that hard work is substitute to everything, but there's no substitute to hard work. So I just keep telling them that even if you feel I am not, when I ask children why not doing well, no ma'am, I'm not good in maths. So I'll say, no, you need to work harder in maths. You never say that you are not good in maths. So this is the way that I keep telling them, you can do it. You might be walking slowly than others. It will take you 3 hours to do what they do it in 1 hour, but keep moving and you will reach it there. And I keep telling them that the harder the work you work, the luckier you keep getting. And recently I removed the word hard. I tell them that now I suddenly think that if we call it hard work, it means we don't like it. If I like it, then it is work, something which I enjoy, which I find joy in. So let's enjoy what we are doing. And I've seen amazing results. I tell children that, I expect you to do much better in your boards, and it is so heartening to see that children come and tell me, ma'am, I got 10% more marks in my board exam after you motivated us. So there was a batch of students who were very, very naughty and notorious. They will be found out of the class, bunking classes. So I caught hold of them and started motivating them, and I was so desperate that I said, when you pass, I'll make you sit down with me and have a cup of tea with you personally. And on the day of the result, they told the peon outside my office, tell ma'am that your most notorious children have come. So I thought, who is there? And then they came and they said, ma'am, where's the cup of tea? I got 70%, I got 75%. Not only they had passed, but with flying colors, And that is the moment it is freezed in my memory that I had tears in my eyes. They wanted to get photographs done, and it was my personally fulfilling moment. So I think we cannot give up hope on any child. Every
Absolutely.
child can work. I never give up hope on any child. When teachers say ye nahi karta, I tell them give him to me. So I'll make him do. So I think it is just trusting them, believing in them, and giving them the right support. Then any child can be a winner.
Wonderful. Very well said. Okay, I'm just going to, for a message for our listeners now, I see some questions beginning to come in. Please post your questions, and before the end of the session today, we'll try and answer all these questions. Rashmi, coming back to the school, of course, getting 6,000 students, motivating them is a great job. But of course, you alone can't do it. You need a whole team of teachers, support staff, etc. How do you bring it all together? I'm sure that in itself is a huge task, and then motivating everyone to that level. What is your experience on that?
Yeah, it is, many times people ask me that how come, I've been able to motivate people, or when I say my teachers work a lot, so my next question generally is, how come, your teachers work more than others? So, I have, I would in this context like to say that my first and foremost thing is that as a watchdog, and I first of all, my motivation for people is that giving them the onus of their own work. So the way I have motivated my teachers is that, I keep saying that uh, it is your school. You have to first take the onus, and we have to shift the work culture from I have to do to what I want to do. So most of my teachers are out of this, that they have to do because it's a job, because it has to be done. No, because they want to do. And when that feeling comes of want to do is when you give them this feeling, it's your school as much as mine. When they see that I also I'm doing a job, but I give my whole life to it, my whole time to it, then they also start believing that it is my school. And I keep telling them, work for your own satisfaction, not to for getting any type of credit. I keep telling them that two types of people in the world, one who work and other who get the credit for it. So better to be in the first group, there is no competition there, right? So that is my favorite message. Another my favorite message to them is that, learn, you add ordinary to, sorry, you add extra to ordinary and you become extraordinary, any work. So learn to walk that extra mile, a little extra mile, and then, you become so good at your work that nobody can remove you. And if this organization doesn't need you, some other organization needs you. Is that I think that I try to give them a lot of autonomy along with the responsibility, because success doesn't come without that. We generally give them work, but I want to control. So I, the right person for the right job, in my context, that most of the people I put for the job, I feel that this is the right person, then I trust him completely, and then I give him free hand, free autonomy to work. And so in my school, unless and until somebody gets a promotion or becomes a principal somewhere, they will not leave. So it is interesting, because even people don't go and become principal, because I keep telling them that it is the time, but they would say no, we don't want to move, because they feel it is my school, I enjoy working there. So that's my mantra, I think. And often I keep quoting to them that, see, one Rashmi has ignited so many. Rashmi means a ray of light. So now they are all rays of light, and together they make the sun of Police GAV, which shines so brightly. And I keep telling them that light from within, with your own light, without anybody lighting you up or controlling you. So there's a Taba se koi kehte, mere Taba is the sun. ये मेरे ताबा से कोई कहते कि अपनी किरणों को गिन गिन के रख ले, ये मेरे ताबा इस सहरा के जर्रा जर्रे को चमकना सिखा रहा, right?
Beautiful.
That I am teaching everyone to shine by their own light. Yeah, that is my mantra, I think. Thank you.
Beautifully said, Rashmi. Actually, if you ever choose, you can be a great corporate motivator. You have a ready-made second career available for you.
Thank you.
I feel so charged by,
as
by
I
your...
said, that motivating. That's what I said. Motivating people is my forte. I really enjoy doing it, and I get the feedback that yes, I am able to do it. Yeah.
Wonderful. So, Rashmi, of course, now these days, especially the last 6 months or so, have been totally unprecedented, without a context. Nobody has any idea where that this was coming. We were all caught almost totally underprepared or unprepared, unaware of what this whole thing is. How has this impacted the school, the schooling, and especially how has it impacted the students? These are young minds and they're free-spirited. What have been some of your unique experiences, experiments, and what has worked for the school and what has not worked, totally in context of COVID-19?
Yeah. See, Vimalji, when the COVID started in March, it came as a bolt from the blue. It was totally unexpected, unprepared, and nobody was ready to face such a huge change. And earlier, we had a lot of technology in our school. We used to encourage teachers to use that technology, but there was some amount of reluctance. But now technology was the way. And I have realized that technology cannot substitute teachers, but technology in the hand of great teachers is transformational. So a transformation came. Teachers quickly picked up and learned the technology. even those who were like of my age, had minimum exposure, younger are quicker to learn, even they picked it up. And even I picked it up. I had honestly not heard of Zoom before that, and now every day I am on a Zoom call. So it was such a change. And change is always difficult in the beginning and messy in the middle, but it is transformational in the end. So this is what happened, that it was very, very difficult in the beginning. We had to train teachers, and the lockdown was so sudden that many of them didn't have the hardwares at home. But anyway, the mobile came as a big support, and everybody started off. And initially, like, children also took it lightly because they thought that it is only for a short time. And I also kept telling teachers that anyway, teach with this thought that we will repeat whatever they're doing now once they come back to school. But then we realized that it was there to stay for a very, very long time. So then children also started getting serious about it, adapted to it, and we came to know that they would have their own Zoom calls before they brought problems to the teachers. So within small groups also they were using this, so that they could put all the questions together to the teacher in the question hours time. So a lot of changes came. We tried many platforms, things kept moving, and then we realized that teacher training was required. So online teacher training started, and I think teachers responded beautifully, and so did the children and the parents. The one biggest challenge has been the assessment, the examination, because you have to be like, there is very, very difficult to do the fair examination being monitored by the teacher online. So I personally started sending my voice messages and videos to the parents and the children, that this is the time to develop the value of integrity. Don't consult anybody, don't cheat, because now you are a self learner. Check whether you have achieved your own learning outcome or not. And that made a lot of difference. We started checking our scores. They were like as heterogeneous as before, normally distributed, some children doing now on average, and very few doing extremely well, and others doing not so well. So we realized that they were being truthful. So I'm very happy that in this process they acquired the value of truthfulness, honesty, and integrity.
Beautifully said. And I guess it all starts from the trust that you are able to impose in them, or inculcate in them, the spirit of trust. Thank you, Rashmi. And
Vimalji, you are not audible. Yeah, Vimalji, you are not audible. I didn't get out. Yeah.
Okay, so I was just complimenting you on this kind of approach, which is built over trust. Beside this, in terms of logistics, in terms of managing the whole system, 6,000 students, I'm sure you have several hundred teachers. Were there any challenges which you had to suddenly overcome?
Yeah, as I just talked about the challenges, yes, that there were a lot of challenges, but we created them into opportunities, because, earlier, as you were saying, people were apprehensive about what goes on in our classroom. Parent was not sure. Rather, we converted it into an opportunity, because now the classroom went to the home. So even parents could sit down and or they could see the videos teachers were using, making to clarify some topics. In the smaller children, we use the blended mode, that we have online classes and the videos also being made. So now parent could also see that input and the effort teacher puts in. So I think that the parents' admiration and respect for teacher has got manifold up, because now they realize that how much effort does the teacher put and what goes on. Because parent, one thing that is not possible is that the parent sits in the classroom, which has become now possible. So I think it is for parent to see that how much effort the teacher puts in. So I think we converted that challenge into an opportunity, because we have got a lot of appreciation and support from the parents. Rather, I think that has been one silver lining to the dark cloud.
Lovely, very well said. The next, of course, the new education policy has been just announced last month by the government. I want to ask a few questions related to this, because I'm sure the audience also want to hear about that. First, can you give brief highlights of what are the key aspects of the education policy?
Yeah, we were really awaiting this new education policy, because we have all been a little disappointed that we are working so hard, but why we have not been able to achieve that kind of children who are employable, who are very good citizen of the country. And my favorite couplet to say is that तालीम का शोर इतना, तहजीब पर जोर इतना, बरकत जो नहीं पड़ती नीयत की खराबी है. So we haven't had the barakat in our education so far, and I think because the good intentions were missing. And I'm really hopeful that this new education policy brings in that. And the first and the foremost change in the education policy is that now it's going to include the pre-primary education as well, because the universalization of education is the from preschool to the secondary level. Now they have, what they have done is that they want to bring back the 2 crore children who are out of schools back to the schools. You know, that is the major thrust of the NEP. And as I said, the system has now changed. Earlier we had the senior secondary. Now it has become 5 plus 3 plus 3 plus 4. That is the 5 years of pre-primary education, because earlier our national curriculum would start from class 1. But now they are starting from nursery or pre-nursery or preschool, whatever they call it, because they are planning that in Angarwadis, they bring in these children also and have a curriculum for them. So that is still class 2nd, 5 years of pre-primary, then 3 years of primary, that is grade 3rd, 4th and 5th, and then 3 years of upper primary or middle, that is grade 6, 7 and 8, and 4 years of secondary. We do not have the word now senior secondary. So earlier it was 10 plus 2. Now it is going to be this 4 years composite course of 9, 10th, 11, 12. And the good thing is that children can opt for subjects of their choice right from grade 9, which they earlier used to do it in grade 11 only. So by 8, the child comes to know he has aptitude for which subject, so he can opt for those subjects. And maybe they come up with some minor and major thing like we have in countries abroad, and that you can do your majors in certain subjects, supposedly sciences, and minors in social studies. Because all the subjects are going to exist at the 2 levels of difficulty. One will be the basic and the other will be the advanced level. And the basic thrust is that there will be a reduction in the curriculum, which we have been demanding so long, because generally our curriculum load is so much that children just cram up things, do rote learning, and do not grasp the basic concept being taught in each class. So there is going to be a change for that. And then the major change which is coming is that the medium of instructions they are suggesting is that till class 5, it could be Hindi or any other regional language.
Okay.
Then another change which is expected is that they are introducing board exams in class 3, 5, 8 along with 10th and 12th. Right, and they are insisting that there should be some innovative pedagogies like experiential learning, art integration, and IT integration, and emphasis on sports. And then they want a book promotion policy and digital libraries in every school. And as I was talking about 11th, 12th, another important thing is that there will be no hardcore separation between vocational subjects and academic subjects, or child can opt for any subject, any 5 subjects out of a bucket of subjects which they will provide, so that he can pick up like biology along with physics, or maybe psychology along with the physics and chemistry. So the hardcore demarcation of medical, non-medical, or commerce or humanities, that they are trying to break very strongly. So these are the key concepts. You know, it will be fully implemented by, I think, 2023, because NCERT will start the process of publishing new books. NCERT books form the basic curriculum for the country. So their director said it will take them 2 years to form the new, write the new books. And I think given in its all in its aspects, comprehensive aspects, it will be fully implemented in 10 years time, that is by 2030.
So is there anything in this which you feel could have been tweaked differently, or it's addressing this thing, but maybe 21st century leadership that India aspires for, is this going to deliver that?
Vimalji, we have all gone through the stresses our children feel at the time of board exams. And the previous system, CCE, had abolished the 10th board, which was quite good. There were some limitations in it, but that was changed. It was like throwing away the baby along with the bathwater. So we could have reformed that. And now adding the board exam in grade 3, 5 and 8, I think it will rob the childhood of the children because they are too young. We have in our school, and as per CBSE also, no examination till class 5, because we don't want to burn them out or stress them out or create an aversion. And in a country which is obsessed with marks, where parents also want marks, school managements want marks, the glorification of the toppers is done in all the newspapers. In such a country, imagine a 3-year-old child being in the newspaper, who is come first or he's come second. I think that is, I have suggested, the government had asked for some suggestions, and I strongly suggested that this we have to be very wary. I understand from where they are coming, because in most of our government schools, children don't even acquire basic literacy and numeracy by class 5. But in public school, where parent, every mother thinks that she's a perfect teacher till class 5, and she becomes that helicopter on the child. Think what she will do to the child in grade 3 or 5. And our schools will be competing with each other, and the whole pressure will ultimately trickle down on the small child. So I'm very, very apprehensive about this step. And other is about the medium of instruction being Hindi or regional language till grade 5. Though it is a very good idea, because the child will be able to grab the core concept, because he's at one place learning the second language, that is English. For around 80% of the children, it is not, of course, their mother tongue or their first language. So, of course, they struggle at one place to learn the language, and then at the other place to learn the basic concepts of math, science, or social studies. So that way it is good that now when they are taught in the medium, they are comfortable. But what happens in 6th? When the curriculum transition is also so much that the quantum of the syllabus increases so much, and if they shift to the English medium, then it might be a huge challenge for teachers, students, and parents as well. So these are my 2 biggest concerns about this.
So interestingly, very pointed question. Do you think this education policy, 20 years from now, you will look back and say, that was the day we started to transform our country into real global leader?
Vimalji, at present it is suggestive. That is why government is taking the feedback from all the stakeholders. Like I told you last week, I was very busy because me and my teachers were giving that feedback. So let's see what the final implementation comes. It will all dependent on that, because writing some drafts is a very different thing vis-a-vis implementing it.
True.
So I think the implementation would be main thing. And as I said, that our intention so far has not been to make everybody literate, to make create not educated but employable youth. So a lot of focus on vocational education. I think another shift we need is to create a dignity of labor. That is why they are suggesting that from 6th onward, a child would have to do some vocational activity, something hands-on like carpentry or this thing, so that he develops a respect, which is so far missing. Everybody wants a white-collar job in our country. Nobody wants to go towards the blue-collar job. So I think one significant thing we need to reduce our unemployment is to bring that to the forefront. If we are able to do that, and our youth gets trained into various skills actually at the school level and develop a respect for that, then I think it will be truly transformational. And by 2030, we would be able to say, yes, we did it.
Fantastic. I think that's a good message that, one of my quotes is, God lives in execution. So we can have all the plans, but unless we execute well, it means nothing. It's just a pipe dream till the execution comes in. Okay, I'm going to open up for questions, and I have seen there are quite a few questions. And to the audience, please post your questions, and we'll request Rashmi to respond to all of them. And the first question comes from Praveen from Steelcase. And the question is touching something which you had spoken of earlier. We all know that the police services is challenging work. How do you counsel parents to bring about positive cultural immersion between students and parents?
Yeah, very good question, Parveenji. Thank you so much for that. I would like to share the ideology with which and the philosophy with which our founders, our DGP, Mr. M.S. Buller, set up the school. He used to say that I know that my force is corrupt, has many issues, and I can't change them. That is why I want to change their children. I want the child to be the guide. I feel that when they will acquire the right values from the school, right way of living from the school, they will go back and take it home and change the parents, because a child can only change his parents. So in these last 24 years, I have seen actually, when you people tell me when you go to their home, the way the homes are laid out aesthetically, the way the families behave, like, a simple parent was telling me in Punjabi that, whenever guest comes to your school, you give a bouquet, they meant, and my child insists that my father is coming from abroad, we need to take a bouquet for him. So these are the small little changes when they observe in the school, when they observe what is the right way of behaving in society, what is righteous earning and a good language. All these things, they go back, trickle down to the parents, because I think it's the children whom parents listen to. So, and then, when parents also come to school, they get a kind of a right kind of exposure. We have parent counseling sessions regularly going on. And when we have any issue with the child, we call the parent, we explain to them what is the right way of handling them. So this really brings about a lot of change. And we have seen that change coming in our police force to a tremendous level.
Wonderful, thank you. We have some more questions here. The next one comes from Ambrose. How do you see the proportion of online learning versus physical learning? Blended learning has been a choice. Will it become a part of future education? Will it be effective? What's your take on this?
I think that as the schools open, it will be a brick and click model. I've been saying, in many of my webinars that, I have been a principal for last 25 years, and I have seen a lot of changes come in education. I have seen blackboards changing into green boards, and then green boards changing into smart boards. And I have seen the textbook being reduced to PDF files, and my multimedia room reduced to a smart classroom. So these are the changes. And another transformation we saw was that we shifted from the BG era to the AG era. That is the before Google era to the after Google era. Before Google era, teacher had all the knowledge. She was the sage on the stage, so she only could impart the knowledge. But in the after Google era, in the AG era, the child also had this access to the same information which the teacher had. So teacher had to change her role, and she had to become the guide by the side and not the sage on the stage. So now we are witnessing another revolution. And I call it that we are shifting from the BC era to the AC era. That is before COVID to after COVID era, right? That now things will never be the same. As I said, it will be a brick and click model. I am so happy that teachers and students both have developed a huge comfort level in technology. No, but nothing in the world can replace the classroom, because the physical presence of the teacher and student is of great value. Nothing can replace that. But as I said, that it will not replace great teachers, but technology in the hand of teachers is transformational. So now in their spare time, when a child or few children come to teacher that I have these problems in schools, children can't stay back extra, they have buses to catch. So teacher fixes up their time. Okay, in the evening we'll have a Zoom call and I'll clarify your doubts. If there are brighter children, we believe in differentiated learning instructions. So if there are brighter children in the class and teacher wants to give them extra input, which will not be relevant to those who were average, she can fix up a Zoom call and give them that extra material. So I think now in future, it is going to be that is the way the world is going to work. Because initially we never thought, I think corporates are also realizing that working from home is fine. We were perhaps wasting so much time, energy into, maintaining all those buildings and this thing. So I think that's why I say that we are shifting from the BC era to the AC era. The world will not look the same, because it was a do or die situation, but all of us came out victorious. So I think this change has come to stay.
Wonderful. There is also an add-on question from Ambrose, but before I come to that, it seems we will extend today's session by a few minutes. Please bear with me, Rashmi. I know that it's Teachers' Day and you have to head to the school, but
Yeah.
I want to go through all these questions, wonderful ones. The next question from Ambrose is, how do you see the emotion of education and how it is going to be affected when we go more digital and from, more off-site than on-site education, the personal bonding, the connect between teachers and students, which your school has been an epitome of. How do you see that evolving?
I said that, you see, nothing in the world can compensate or substitute for that emotive part, And I think today only one of my teachers came to wish me Teachers' Day, and her two sons were wearing school uniform. I said, why uniform? They said, oh, we were so keen to wear this uniform. Children are so keen to come back to school. And I had also seen two children wearing the uniform right after March. So for me also, it was so heartening to see. So I think we are all waiting to come back. School teachers keep calling, ma'am, we are waiting for the pleasant message when you say from tomorrow come to school. So so are the children. So of course that emotion of being together and being with each other cannot be replaced, as I explained in the earlier answer also. But I think, as I said, that when teachers and students spend evenings also together online, so maybe the bond also becomes better, because that teacher only whose children had come in the morning, she was saying that their bond with few teachers she named is so good, because she calls up personally also to check if they have studied or not, and she keeps doing the follow-ups, which is amazing. So I think that has increased the bond rather. In difficult times when human beings get together, I think they are much more bonded well, because you are facing a huge challenge together. So that feeling of together we will do it is like much more.
Very well said. Okay, next question is from Ms. Kavita Singh. The question is, developing love for the subject is an important thing in motivating children to do better. How do you address that? How do you bring them to motivate and fall in love with the subjects?
Yeah, it's a very good question. I personally feel, when I used to teach psychology to my graduate students, each one of my students wanted to do a post-graduation in psychology, right? It was because I was so much in love with my subject that I could rub it off to my children. And that is what, if a teacher, why do we take up some subjects and we don't take up some other subject? If we will look back, all of us will remember, oh, I had a wonderful teacher of this subject. She created that love for the subject in me. And how does she create? By being good at it. And teacher who is herself good at it in her subject, she will create that kind of impact on children, because you have to be yourself in love. If you reluctantly go in the class, reluctantly teach, how do you expect children to acquire that passion? So in our school, what we do is that I pick up teachers who are so good in their subject. We are very, very careful in teacher selection, and this is what I keep telling teachers, that create that excitement, that joy of learning in your children for your subject. And I think that is the way. And then bringing it out of the boring realm, like social study, it disliked with most of the students, because we don't show them videos of war, we don't enact them in the class, we don't have role plays, so that is why children find it boring. Since we have Tata class and software in our school, and they have beautiful videos for the various topics, and our children performance has drastically improved in social study. I'm observing for last 2-3 years, and that is because this audio visual thing which they get to see, it has an amazing effect on their mind. They remember the core concepts through that. Otherwise, reading a book and history and seeing it happen, so you ask anybody about Indian freedom struggle, when some people come who are not well read and this thing, I ask them, what do you know about Indian freedom struggle? They will say Mangal Pandey, because they've seen a movie on Mangal Pandey, so it remains still there. So that is what I feel, that, unless and until you experience it, live it, you will not develop a love for it. So that is what I.
Very well said. Yes. I think very well said, that if it is just read as a chapter in the book, it's a totally different experience from seeing and being part of an immersive experience related to this.
Exactly.
Another very interesting question, which I also used to struggle. I remember when I was in school, you're a psychologist. What is your advice to students on how to avoid an anxiety during exam period or before the examinations or even waiting for the results to come?
I think it is to a large extent the parental issue, right? Because I keep telling my children that when they're about to face the boards, that see, all the exams you have given in school has prepared you for this day, and this exam is no way different from any other exam which you have given in the school. I think it's the society, the parents, everybody, which creates a pressure on the child, because the examination is going to be a public exam. The pressure is tremendous. Then the parent wants to just show off their marks, boast about them. That brings in the pressure. So I think the best way to handle is that the parents don't take any pressure, and they say that it doesn't make a difference. And then I think making children participate in other activities is important, because when they learn to bear the stress on the stage, in a drama, in some presentation, in oration, in sports, every time a child picks up a lawn tennis racket, he's making a virtual decision. When he's playing in front of thousands of people, he's making a decision and learning to cope with stress. So that is why I've always put an emphasis on children doing all these activities, because they are actually stress coping strategies which the child starts bringing up, developing since he's a small child. When he knows that people are watching me perform and it doesn't make a difference to me, any performance in the whole life will not make any difference to him. Otherwise, I request parents not to roko their children, not to nag them, not to stop them, because in India we do that a lot, and we don't let them become independent. And so for them, everything they hang on to mom, her guidance, her this thing. So that is, that causes stress, because any smallest decision, examination is all about deciding which question to do first, which to do later, what to write. So we have to make them good decision makers right from the very beginning, which I'm sorry to say, in India, mom tells, ye khao, ye cannot do this, don't do that. And so we are like always, okay, tell me what I have to do. So we, as a parent, we have to curb that tendency because our parents have done that. We keep doing this to our children unknowingly, without realizing, and that is what causes the stress.
Very well said. I think, Rashmi. The next question is, interestingly, from one of the teachers in the police TAV. And I must mention this here. Most of the other questions are identified by the name of the person who's asking the question. And this one is by one of the teachers who's identifying herself or himself by the name of the school. I think, to me, that's the power of the school branding, that identity that you've created. And it's a beautiful question. Students are living in isolation, without friends, surrounded by parents and their remarks of discipline, and this is not normal for the children. So how can we as teachers support the students in this kind of situation when they're living in isolation?
Yeah, I think it's a very, very relevant question, because anyway, few people living all the day together. And as I said, parents are so very controlling. Other day, I got a picture on Facebook. I saw that the child is studying on the laptop, a small child, and mother is sitting with a slipper in her hand, shown like this. So it was just somebody had made a comedy out of it. But I thought that, oh my God, if any of my child is suffering like that, because then parents, when they control, they just want an absolute control. So I think that is why as a teacher, it is a huge concern, because some of the children have been sharing this also, that they just can't get away from it and from that extreme control of the parent. But I think that like in our class 2nd to 5th, we have a morning period which the teacher spend with the class teacher only. She takes their attendance and just talks journal things with them, in which they get to see all their class fellows. So the purpose was to connect them to the other children, and the purpose was that they just talk out their heart with the children, with the teacher, as to what is happening in their life, what are their concerns. And sometimes, teachers would share, they start talking amongst each other because they're so excited. Initially it was like that, because small children do not have their own cell phones also, so they get so excited looking at all their class fellows. So I think that teacher having this extra period where no academic transaction takes place, but it's only about ice breaking and talking about general things in life. I think in such a scenario, that's the best thing that can be done.
Wonderful. Rashmi, thank you so much. This has been such a lively session. I didn't even realize how quickly we went through some of these questions. I personally have a lot of questions to ask, but one thing I can definitely say, one of these days you should come to our office and give a motivational speech to the corporate community. I think you are absolutely brilliant.
Thank you, Vimalji. That will kickstart my corporate motivation.
Absolutely. I will be delighted. I see a lot of compliments coming in the chat also from several of folks who have been on this call. Thank you so much. This has been really a very lively session, and we touched a lot of different things, starting from your journey and then how the school is managed and the kind of challenges and the new education policy, and then some of the Q&A, which brought out different aspects of education and schooling and being better citizens. Your own story has been very motivating also. Rashmi, really appreciate this. Wish the best to DAV School in its silver anniversary and to all your teachers. Any last message, concluding message from you for all the audience?
Yeah, I want to tell everybody that, let's all contribute. We all feel passionate about our education in India, right? So as I said, that was my little bit I contributed. The teachers are contributing, and those who are not teachers, I feel that even if it is a funding a child, starting a small setup, doing something in the education sector, because that's going to be the root of the progress of our country, where we want our country to be after 20-25 years. So in whatever small manner you can contribute to the education of the children, please come forward and do it. Because I would end with a couplet which says, नई दुनिया बनाने को नए आंसर नहीं आते, यही मिट्टी संवरती है, यही जर्रे उभरते हैं. So we can't wait for any Mahatma or any prophet to come and change things. It is only we the people, who have to buy our small little, to the level of a small zarra. We have to bring in the change, and together we can, and we will do it. Thank you so much.
Fantastic, Rashmi. Before I conclude, just of course, lots of comments here coming in. One of them is from someone who actually is asking, can they visit your school?
Yeah, sure. Anytime. Most welcome. I have my LinkedIn profile, and you can go to that, and you can take the number from Vimalji and connect with me anytime. Most welcome to come. Okay. Thank you so much. It has been a real honor. I've really enjoyed every minute. I requested Vimalji to keep a track, because I said when I start speaking, I can really go on. And thank you for being such patient audience and listening to me. And it has been wonderful. It will always remain a beautiful Teachers' Day for me. Thank you, Vimalji, for making it beautiful.
Thank you, Rashmi. So what I will do is, after this, I will curate this video, and it will be available in about 48 hours online. At the end of the video, I'll have a link to the Police DAV website, which has the phone number through which you can be reached. And I'll also add your LinkedIn profile through which you can be reached. And so before I conclude, let me just quickly read through some of the comments. Very enlightening and always thankful. An inspirational session, nice conversation with a wonderful intellectual person. So they're talking about you. Really very motivating and inspiring. Congratulations, Rashmi. You should be on NDTV. That's interesting. Okay, of course, then there's a comment, they want to visit you in school. Very lively, wonderful time today. Well done, Rashmi. Wonderful session. Ma'am, what great contributions. You've changed the face of education. Indeed, an enriching webinar, well presented. Thank you. Thank you so much, Rashmi. Really appreciate it. To all the teachers, parents, and students, happy Teachers Day. I must say, honestly, I'm a product of my teachers. They've really built me into what I am today. And it's really a privilege for me to have learned from such minds who have influenced me. Thank you very much. Have a lovely weekend.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.